Blog Talk Radio.
You're tuned into In5D Radio, the next dimension in radio, where we bring you the hottest, in-depth, spiritual, metaphysical, esoteric conversations and news with your hosts, Gregg Prescott and Kendra Gilbert. Get ready for spirit, body, and mind to expand in 3, 2, 1.
Namaste and welcome to In5D Radio, coming to you from Sarasota, Florida, every Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, and 12 a.m. midnight in the UK. I'm your host, Gregg Prescott from In5D.com, and for the next 2 hours, we're going to be raising the vibration of the planet, galaxy, and universe. My co-host, Kendra, will not be here tonight, so for the next 2 hours, it's going to be just you and me. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the current financial collapse and how it's actually helping us transition into the Golden Age. But first, I'd like to remind everyone about our first annual Return to Atlantis conference here in Sarasota, Florida at the Lido Key Holiday Inn on the weekend of October 4th through the 6th, 2013, featuring Lisa Renee, Teal Scott, Laura Eisenhower, Dr. Dream, astrologer Tom Capacha-Lesher, and galactic historian Andrew Bartis, who has the rare ability of looking into the Akashic records, and he was our guest last week on In5D Radio. It all kicks off Friday evening with a new moon beach galactivation with Dr. Dream. Then on Saturday, we're having a cosmic reunion beach party, and on Sunday night, we're all going to meet at the Siesta Key Drum Circle. Our speakers will be featured from late morning until mid-afternoon, so you'll have plenty of time to check out Sarasota or simply enjoy the 99% quartz crystal sands of Sarasota's Gulf Shores. Due to limited seating, there are only 90 tickets available to this event. You can find out more info about the Return to Atlantis conference by visiting www.in5devents.com or click the link below this video. Last week, I released 12 Solfeggio videos on the In5D YouTube channel, and I'll continue to release all variations of these solfeggios in the near future. Each solfeggio has its own frequency as well as healing benefits. I created several different variations that include a morning alpha binaural beat, an evening theta binaural beat, holophonic bells, and holophonic water, as well as every combination of these. So the next time you're meditating, try meditating to these solfeggios. Are you experiencing any hair loss? I talked to Kendra about this recently, and both she and I have experienced hair loss, and it makes you wonder if it's attributed to the Fukushima nuclear reactor meltdown and how nuclear fallout has been circulating throughout the planet since 2011. I'm in the process of writing an article about this for In5D.com. Now, both Kendra and I have a lot of hair, and we both live in Florida, and it makes me wonder about the jet stream and how Webbot Cliff High talked about the ill winds that would circulate around the planet.
What's going to kill all of the humans is going to be these ill winds, and that this is the beginning of the great harvest of souls that the Mayans talked about. And I can easily believe it. I'm sitting here in a level where my radioactivity is now several thousands of times higher than it was a few years back, less than 10 years back. And so I see with 1 or 2 more events, the certainty of my death from radiation in 5 years is pretty good. Because within the first month, it was estimated that everybody in Seattle, within the first month of the Fukushima accident in 2011, on March 11, it was estimated that everybody in Seattle had had the opportunity to breathe in at least 15 hot spots. It takes only one to cause a fatal cancer. A certain type of radioactivity in the form of, the heavier elements, strontium or, God forbid, plutonium, and you're toast. You're dead within days. You'll be bleeding out. Strontium longer, but plutonium within days.
Now, I firmly believe that we are receiving galactic intervention in both our air and water supplies because the amount of radiation should have already done numerous damages to millions, perhaps billions of people. And an interesting side note, the jet stream has moved northwards 270 miles in 22 years. So if you've experienced any abnormal hair loss recently, feel free to call in and talk to us about it. Our phone lines will be open around 7:45 or so, and our call-in number is 646-716-8890. And I see on the switchboard our friend Andrew is here with us. Andrew, welcome to In5D Radio. How are you doing tonight, brother?
How you doing?
Good,
Greg?
good. How are you doing? Yeah. How are you doing tonight, Andrew?
Oh, I'm doing great. I actually called into the show last week, but all the other callers called in before me, so I never got a chance to speak to Andrew, but no harm done. I guess the early bird gets the worm, or in this case, the guest on the radio show.
I'll tell you, we were flooded. We had so many callers last week that there was a lot of people that weren't able to get through, so I apologize for that.
No, you don't have to apologize. It's my fault for not being the early bird. But anyway, since you're on the subject of financial collapse and the golden age, I think that I'd like to make reference right now to something that I made reference to not that long ago when Kelly Rosano was on the show. When you let me on, I made reference to a video on YouTube that can use us to help to beat the system, using the system's own laws to beat them. And I made reference to that YouTube video on Alex Jones's official channel, the Alex Jones YouTube channel, the Alex Jones channel it's called. And that video was called Secrets Police Don't Want You to Know. And that video, which is 2.5 hours long, former Sheriff's Deputy Eddie Craig exposes how we can get out of paying our traffic tickets and whatnot because, A, you don't need a license, registration, insurance, or license plate on your car to drive unless you're a commercial driver, and 2, transportation laws only apply to commercial drivers, and that means it's illegal for law enforcement personnel to pull over or stop and issue transportation tickets to non-commercial drivers. And the reason they keep telling us driving is not a right, it's a privilege, over and over again, is to brainwash us into believing this scam. And this scam alone has caused them to take billions upon billions of dollars from us. And since you were saying something, Greg?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I thought I heard something in the background. But, yeah, I was mentioning this video teaches us how to get out of paying our tickets and all and beat the system. And because they've stolen billions upon billions of dollars from us by scamming us into thinking the transportation laws don't apply, I think it's totally worthwhile for people to be aware of this video and watch this video. And believe me, every single second of the 2.5 hours of it is worth listening. And if you follow the advice in this video, then you aren't going to have to pay another traffic ticket again. And that'll help keep money out of the Illuminati's hands. It'll keep it out of the corrupt cops' hands, the corrupt politicians' hands. And figured that would be worth bringing up since we're on the subject of financial collapse in the golden age.
You know, I've listened to that video. As a matter of fact, I turned it into an MP3, and I listened to it several times when I go out in the car or at the beach or whatever. And I believe there's like 6 or 7 different sequences of questions that you need to ask the police when they pull you over. And there's a lot of great advice in there. One of the things they say, I believe, is to not have your windows all the way open. You just want to crack open one window, and that's it, and just a short way, enough for them to hear what you're saying. You never want to roll your windows down all the way. And unfortunately, I drive a convertible, so and my top is usually down, so that one's kind of out the window. But it is loaded with a lot of great information. And like I said, I did post that, I think, somewhere on In5D. And what I'll do is I think I'll put it into the links at the bottom of the page just for a quick reference for people, too. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, totally worthwhile. I mean, a lot of people, I've tried to spread the word about that video, and it's really pathetic. A lot of people just say, well, cops and courts can do whatever they want, so it's not worth trying, but they are sorely mistaken if they believe that, because that guy, Eddie Craig, and his law class students, they always manage to avoid paying their tickets by following this. I mean, I can't guarantee you that the cop's not going to bash out your window and take you to jail, but I can guarantee you that if you follow the script, then you're not going to lose in court. And some people who need to know this stuff are actually employers. You ever notice how every single job application always asks, do you have a license? Well, the reason they ask that is because they think it would be illegal to use your own personal car to commute to and from work without a license, when in fact it's not. And that's all the more reason why people need to be aware of that information to keep money out of the corrupt politician and Illuminati's hands.
Well, not just that, too. They also do all sorts of credit checks, which I think is absolute bullshit when you're doing a review of a job application. You know, what the person's credit is, especially in this economy. A lot of people are having credit issues, and you shouldn't really take that into consideration.
Yeah, that is true. And since we're on the subject of finance, people need to wake up to the fact that our financial system, in which they loan us money that does not exist and charges interest on the loans, makes debt and inflation unavoidable. Anybody with any common sense in regards to finance would understand that a system that's considered too big to fail, but yet is designed to fail, is not going to work. And yet, because people are so freaking cognitively dissonant, they don't seem to understand that. And I mean, I've spoken to some people about this, and very often they say, well, maybe it'll be a problem in about 50 years. And I'm thinking, what, you're proving everyone's point, that you're proving all the people that are in the know, you're proving their point that people have too much cognitive dissonance, that they will not understand finance. But whenever the day comes when money is not available, I'm very interested to see how we go about that, because the way people are so cognitively dissonant in regards to this issue makes me wonder how in the world could we possibly get into a system where there's no money.
Well, you know, you and I and many of our listeners can understand that. A lot of us have seen the Venus Project, and we understand how it is possible to live in abundance and prosperity without money. But a lot, and I'll be touching on this later on in the show, a lot of people, perhaps in like our parents and our grandparents' generations, they're kind of stuck in their ways, and you know, those are the hardest ones to reach. Unfortunately, those are also the ones that are controlling all the corporations and the mainstream media and so on and so forth. So, you know, as this generation moves on to the other side, it's going to be replaced with people that are more open-minded. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I do believe you on that one. And I've listened one of your videos on YouTube, the one where Carrie Cassidy interviews Bob Dean. There was a scene that I still remember where Bob Dean was telling Carrie, he said, Carrie, there is going to be a global currency. I do remember hearing him say that. I don't remember all the details, but I just remember that because that kind of stood out to me. And Bob Dean, he's a gentleman and a very knowledgeable guy, and I think they tried to brainwash him too because he's exposing so many secrets. The Illuminati goes to so much trouble to brainwash him. I don't know if they brainwashed him into thinking that there will be a global currency, if that's the reason he said it, but I don't know. I just thought I'd point that out, that some knowledgeable guy like whistleblower Bob Dean would actually tell Carrie Cassidy that there will be a global currency, whatever he meant by that.
Well, I guess that does remain to be seen, and we've talked a little about this, and I'll also be talking about that later on in the show too, that, you know, the whole global currency thing, you know, we've heard all about the New World Order and how, you know, they want the one world currency, government, and religion. I think where we're heading, at least with what I'll be bringing up here, is, you know, a lot of people are going to say, well, this is a lot like that, but it's not, and I'll explain that a little bit later.
Yeah, that's good to know. And many people ask, what is money? Well, only like maybe 0.05 or less is actual cash. The rest is just numbers on a screen. I mean, technically they would say it's derivatives, but if you want to describe what a derivative is, you would have to spend at least 30 minutes explaining everything. So the simple short answer is money, derivative specifically, is numbers on a screen, which is kind of pathetic if you ask me.
Oh, yeah, and there's trillions upon trillions that are insured by the FDIC of derivatives. They're insuring these derivatives. So if you think that once the dollar collapses, that you're going to get your money out of the bank after they've already insured all these big banks' derivatives, you got another thing coming.
Yeah, so buy gold and silver, I say. I mean, if you're not going to stock up on food and other survival supplies, then at the very least, get gold and silver. And gold, I think, is the best because there is a few things with silver that make it not as good to buy as gold. I don't know why, but I do remember hearing that. But at the very least, buy gold and silver if you're going to stock up on something to prepare for a collapse, I would advise.
Well, definitely, and make sure it's physical and not some paper that says you're entitled to X amount of ounces or whatever of silver or gold.
Yeah, and make sure it's not gold-covered tungsten because they're also pulling that scam off, and we got to make sure that you get gold and it's not gold-covered tungsten.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep, I couldn't agree more.
Yes. So, well, I guess that was all I really wanted to point out at this moment. So,
all right, brother. Well, I look forward to your. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I was going to call in later on another future show. I'll definitely call in, and glad you can get me on today's show.
Oh, definitely. Appreciate you calling in. Thanks again, brother.
You're welcome. Have a good show, Greg.
All right. Thank you. Take care now.
Bye.
Imagine if all of your debts were erased literally overnight. According to Bix Weir, who has 30 years experience in the financial industry with numerous Fortune 500 companies, this could be a reality in the next few months.
There's another scenario, and that's the scenario of wiping the slate clean. And wiping the slate clean basically is doing nothing. If we do nothing when the banks crash, then all money is wiped clean because everybody keeps their money in banks.
So what would happen to the common man's $5,000-$10,000 in his bank account if, you know, a lot of people don't even have that, but what would happen to the common guy's money? I mean, you just going to tell him you have no money, we have new digits we're going to start over with? I mean, how would that work?
Well, that's what the Fed Boston has been thinking about and discussing in the work that I've done since the 60s. How do you reallocate money when the system crashes? Now, the guy who has $10,000 in the bank, most likely he's got, $200,000-$300,000 mortgage IOUs. That will go away as well. So would you change the $10,000 you had in the bank that you're not going to get back? You made a bad credit decision giving that money to a bank. In exchange, the bank has lost all their money, sold off the house loans and mortgage-backed securities. That will go away as well. So, the guy with $10,000 is going to end up owning his house flat out because the bank won't be able to confiscate it like they're doing now. Everyone holds their money in banks. Even the brokerage houses have their money in banks. And the derivative situation is such a mess that once that starts to go, a couple of those big banks go, every other counterparty will fall too. So you're looking at a complete wipeout of all debt in all banks.
Weir goes on to talk about how there will be a reallocation of money along with how this transition will take place.
How do you reallocate money after it collapses? We all know that every unbacked currency has collapsed. There is a plan. There has been a plan in place for 40 years in the United States, and it has to do with reallocating money according to how much you paid into Social Security. If you make a certain amount of money over like $120,000 or something, they stop taking Social Security out.
That's right.
The whole reason behind that was this reallocation plan. That's why they haven't touched Social Security. That's why it's in a lockbox. I know today Social Security money is nothing. You get a pittance and you can't live off it. But imagine if all money was gone. All the banks crash, the derivative bubble crashes, and go down with the money. They take the whole ship down. The United States would have to reallocate money to its citizens. If everybody got equal share, it wouldn't be fair. And it's not fair already. But if you think about how many people have paid into the Social Security system already, it's kind of even more fair because those that work the hardest will have the most in Social Security, and those who are older, who you really have to convince about this new way of allocating money, will get the most first, and then those who are still working, the younger kids, will get more as they work more.
Whether you like it or not, the currency we have today in hand is going to work pretty good for a while. And you're saying that they'll either take that old currency back in off the street, they'll institute new currency or digits or whatever, and it'll be tied to the gold. Is that right?
Well, there's a few things going on there. The first thing is it has recognition by the people. That's pretty much the only thing we recognize as money, those physical pieces of paper and the coins.
So that would work for a while.
I think it would work on a slow transition. The other reality is that the paper ones, not the coins, but the paper money are Federal Reserve notes. Federal Reserve is broke. They have no money. They create it out of thin air. The United States Congress can shut down the Federal Reserve in a blink of an eye, and I think they will. Now, the question is, should they honor those bills for a while going forward until we issue Treasury notes? I think that would be a good plan. So if you have physical bills in your hand, and there is a banking collapse where all the banks take each other out, basically, by defaulting on all the derivatives they have with each other, you might be pretty well off if you keep your coins in the back of your closet and your bills in your hand, at least for a little while. And it might take a few weeks to reallocate money according to, some will be according to need of the people, but some will also be according to how hard people have worked through their Social Security.
Now, I've been telling people for quite a while on In5D, and this is what Andrew and I just talked about too, that they need to start purchasing physical silver or gold, which means you're not going to buy gold or silver from a broker who gives you a worthless piece of paper saying that you own whatever amount you bought from them. What you want is the actual physical gold or silver. And I know money is tight for a lot of us, but if you're going to buy physical gold or silver, then I would recommend buying junk silver, which is any U.S. quarter, dime, or 50-cent piece from 1964 or older. And it doesn't matter what country you live in, wherever you are and wherever you live, start buying physical junk silver, because if the shit hits the fan and you have various size silver coins, you can always use them for trading or bartering. That's why you should have some smaller coins, such as a dime, which is worth about $3.50 in silver. And with that dime, you could buy a loaf of bread or a couple dozen eggs. Another option is to trade your dollar bills for everyday coins from 1965 and newer, and here's why.
The best thing to do is, if you want to just have some money, go out and buy some rolls of quarters and half dollars, just the regular nickel-plated quarters and half dollars that we have today, and go out there and store them as opposed to Federal Reserve notes, because those coins are not Federal Reserve notes. Those coins are quarter dollars, not quarter FRNs. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, yeah, all our change is minted by the Treasury and not the Federal Reserve.
That's very unusual.
So, yeah, it is an interesting concept. But if you're going to take that type of a drastic route, my number one investment is pre-1965 coinage, the silver coinage, because in the background of all this, the collapse of the monetary system, the collapse of the banks, people go into their checking account and not be able to get money out of their ATM. In the background, everybody will be scrambling for gold and silver. I don't think they will be traded at all, because it would be the last theoretical form of money that the people have. And every time an unbacked system collapses, every single time people go back to gold and silver as money, it will happen again, even though we've forgotten over the last 40 years what gold and silver really is. People are starting to wake up now, and when they can't get money out of their checking account because their bank defaulted, that's really when you're going to see people scrambling for physical gold and silver in your possession.
But you're also going to see some violence here. I mean, there's going to be some have-nots. There's going to be people with no money starving. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, there is now, but there will be a lot more when this collapse happens. That's why I think the plan that the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston has put together is so important, because at least we're a little prepared for what's going to happen, and there is a plan to get money back out into the hands of the people. Those have-nots will be a whole lot better off than they are right now. We haven't had a true gold standard in the United States since the invention of the Federal Reserve in 1913. So, everything since then has been going farther and farther away from the gold standard, and the U.S. dollar has been destroyed 98, 99% now. When will we hit 100%? Theoretically, when the derivative bubble crashes and all dollars are destroyed.
How close are we to that?
It almost happened. In 2008, we were maybe hours away from that happening. And really what it is a loss of faith. In 2008, Hank Paulson said, if you don't pass this bill, if you don't give these banks all this money, you're going to lose everything, and everything will be wiped out, because we built this system on a foundation that is so weak and growing at the top and so small at the bottom that it can't withstand that kind of hit. They've delayed it for maybe 5 years now. But when it hits next, which most people are saying probably August, September timeframe, we're going to start to see some shaky banks. That's when the people are ready to stand up and say, no, we're not going to bail you out this time.
This is why astrology is so important to us, because it shows us how certain energies from various alignments will bring specific changes. In 2008, I told my daughter about this rare astrological alignment that the last time it had occurred was back during the Summer of Love in 1967. And I told her specifically, I said, because of this energy, I told her, check it out. I guarantee that tie-dye will make this huge comeback. And sure shit, right on schedule, tie-dye makes this huge comeback. I remember going into the surf shops here and seeing tie-dye boogie boards and just shaking my head, knowing ahead of time that would be the energy that would produce this kind of effect. And that's what really sold me on astrology, and I've been researching and studying it ever since. Now, fast forward to Pluto entering Capricorn in 2008, and right on schedule, we saw the collapse of hundreds of banks while many of the too-big-to-fail banks got bailed out. And this is just the beginning of Pluto in Capricorn. The last time Pluto was in Capricorn was during the French and American revolutions. And when you look around the world and see what's going on, you'll see revolutions, and this is not a coincidence. We had astrologer Jim Delacoli as our guest on In5D Radio a few weeks ago, and he agrees. We know that when Pluto last did the retrograde, as you mentioned, it started, I believe, in 1760, but we didn't actually have the American Revolution until 1776. Right now, there's revolutions going on everywhere. In Egypt, millions of people are protesting right now. Do you see something inevitably that will happen here in the United States?
That's a no-doubter. It is going to happen. And I'm trying to keep from how severe it's going to be from what I see, but the fact is that the awakenings occurred, and as people start to see how, or continue to see how what's going on and how bad it is and how evil it is and what the intentions were behind it and the control that's there, they're looking at this from that soul perspective, which is this is not good for evolution, and we've got to stop this. And so, yes, that is going to happen, and I really don't think we can avoid that, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
We got to learn from our mistakes, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that doesn't mean we kill or, it just means the people that are in control need to not be in control. We've got to fix that.
Yeah, peaceful noncompliance, I always say.
Absolutely, absolutely.
In the United States, the last people or the last person who will know that the dollar collapsed will be your typical television-watching sheeple who believes everything they're told on the nightly news. Those who follow alternative news websites, such as In5D Alternative News, then you already know that the dollar died a long time ago and that your fiat currency is basically worthless pieces of paper. For example, it costs about the same amount to print a $1 bill as it does a $100 bill. There's nothing that backs either. They're just pieces of paper that the Federal Reserve places a value on, and we literally buy into that belief that this piece of paper has some kind of monetary value, which it doesn't. Even more insulting, we live our lives as subservient economic slaves because we all buy into this belief that we need money to survive. Now, according to World Bank whistleblower Karen Hughes, the entire world currency is about to implode as world leaders are trying to implement a new asset-backed currency.
I learned the difference between alternative media and the mainstream media, and the fact that the mainstream media is owned by the same financial interests that own the Federal Reserve. My story makes what happened in the Pentagon Papers and Eric Snowden, I'm sorry, when I say my story, it's the World Bank whistleblower story. It doesn't get any bigger than this. And the fact that the people are not being told this is a perfect example of what you call state capture. That is when the media is deliberately preventing the citizens from learning what they need to know to hold their government accountable. That's state capture. And we are talking about all of the information that we have being used to hold the people who have been holding the world hostage, holding them accountable.
Okay, and how close do you think you are at this point?
We are so close, Carrie. We're just days away, if less.
I can promise you this, and we've talked a little about this on In5D Radio. If a UFO were to land in your backyard tonight, there's two things the extraterrestrial won't have: a Bible, and money. What a lot of people don't know is that the United States declared bankruptcy in 1933, and on October 28, 1977, the United States as a corporator and state declared insolvency. Now, I heard this as a kid back in the 1960s, that there wouldn't be any Social Security in the United States by the time I was old enough to receive it, which tells you how long the government has known about this issue and why they're working toward a one world currency. The difference is we're not talking about a one world currency. Under this new program, it appears that each country will retain their currency and it'll be backed by gold or silver or some other precious asset. And once again, this is the power of Pluto and Capricorn, as it's presenting us with the opportunity to take something incredibly corrupted and turn it into something positive. But this is only a temporary solution because it still keeps us locked in as economic slaves to the system, and that's why I often ask people, what if there was no such thing as money? What would you be doing with your life? You can learn a lot about a person by the answer that he or she gives. Now, most people will say something along the lines of, I'd travel a lot, or I'd just have a lot of fun. But after you traveled and you had fun for so many months or years, then eventually you'll want to do something that contributes to society. Chances are you didn't incarnate here just to travel and to have fun. Most of us have a higher reason as to why we're here, whether that's to atone from a karmic debt from a previous life or to serve a higher purpose. Each time you incarnate to this planet, you're given the opportunity to further your spiritual progression. So after you've traveled and done all that fun stuff, then what would you be doing to make yourself a better person or to contribute to society? This is what I would do. I'd have a huge orchard with a bunch of different fruits on it, and I'd put up a sign telling people to help themselves to whatever fruit I had and to take a little extra if they know someone who's hungry. My educational background and work history is in child and family therapy, so I'd probably also work with helping people find their true divine purpose for being here. I'd also like to teach the children in a Montessori-type school setting about how to follow their life's paths. So with that being said, if there was no such thing as money, what would you be doing with your life? And feel free to call in and tell us. Our call-in number is 646-716-8890. What would you be doing with your life if there was no such thing as money? And I see we have a couple callers here. We're going to bring aboard area code 720. 720, are you there? Hello? 720. Okay. Okay, we're going to put you on hold. They're probably just listening. And we have another caller here from area code 870. You're on the air on In5D Radio with Gregg Prescott. Can I get your name?
This is Connie Gregg. How are you tonight?
Hi. Good, Connie. How are you doing?
I'm in Arkansas. I couldn't think of anything really clever to call about tonight to ask you about. I actually called when you went off the air. I lost you on the Internet, so I called to see if you were aware that you weren't being broadcasted. But I was just wondering, how long do you see this period lasting of when the money collapses? How long do you think this is going to last where everything will be in chaos?
Well, you know, there's several different trains of thought, and I'm kind of leaning towards this being a peaceful transition, because right now they're already scurrying around at the highest ends of government, trying to put something in place that's going to prevent total chaos, even though we know that at the highest order of Freemasonry, their motto is order out of chaos. So through this, I'm sure that there is some kind of a ulterior plan as well. But what their ulterior plan is for a one world currency, and that's not what they're hinting at right now. They're just talking about a currency replacement in each particular country that would be either gold or silver backed currency. So I'm hoping that to answer your question, I'm hoping it's a smooth transition. But you never know. So you can, I always tell people to err on the side of caution, or to err on the side of caution.
Right. Well, I sure hope you're right about that.
Yeah, I do too. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. A lot of people are in disbelief, thinking that it'll never happen, but it's always happened. Trace history. If you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. All throughout history, currencies have collapsed, and the U.S. currency is the oldest and longest-lasting currency ever, and it's inevitable. It has to collapse, and it's going to happen real soon. That's my own discernment and guess.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. That pretty much answers my question. As close as
Alrighty.
anybody could right now.
Yeah, it's
Thank you.
anyone's call, so you're very welcome, Connie.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, take care now.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And thank you for calling in also to remind me that I was on mute. Now, I mentioned Pluto in Capricorn earlier, and that's going to play a huge role, not only in the collapse of money, religion, and government, but also in helping to usher in the golden age. We did a show on In5D Radio called How to Deprogram Yourself, and it was based on an article I wrote on In5D.com, and this is part of the process. In other words, we need to get away from our old ways of thinking and being literally programmed and start thinking for ourselves while questioning everything. Now, I was at the beach a couple days ago, and I was talking to this one dude over there, and he's telling me that there's no way they'll let the dollar die. And, he's just living in denial. Like I just mentioned to Connie, no currency has ever lasted longer than the U.S. dollar, and it's about to collapse. And the people who listen to the mainstream media will be the last to know. Little story here. My grandparents lived through the Great Depression after the stock market crash in October of 1929. My grandmother passed on in the early 1980s. Shortly afterwards, my grandfather died as well. Now, we're talking over 50 years since the Great Depression after my grandparents died, and they found over $60,000 in cash that was hidden in shoeboxes in their basement because they still feared that the banks would once again collapse. And they were right, but they were just a few, 10, 20, 30 years off, as we're on the verge of the next collapse right now. I keep telling my parents to learn from their parents' mistakes and that a collapse is inevitable, but they won't listen to me. And I'm sure a lot of you out there, are in the same boat. These are part of the life experiences that we go through that we're supposed to learn something from. And I can talk to my parents until I'm blue in the face, but they're part of the Pluto in Leo and Pluto in Cancer generations, and they're pretty much set in their ways. And what you're going to start seeing is that once these two generations pass on, there will be more of an open view on creating new and innovative solutions. But until then, these are the generations that are controlling governments, banking systems, and the mainstream media. They say it's always darkest before the dawn, and right now it seems like everything is coming down on us through the pollution of our water, our air, and food supplies, along with the corrupted governments in literally every nation. Now, back in 2008, during the banking collapse, I released a video called Banking Collapse Announces the Beginning of the Golden Age. And a lot of people didn't see the big picture on how the collapse of all these banks was actually a blessing, because they were too tied up in third-dimensional thinking and could not envision a world without money, which means they can only envision a world where they're forever being an economic slave to the system. My mother has a hard time with this concept, and you'll find that people who have Pluto in Leo or Cancer on their birth charts are pretty much set in their ways. Now, the Pluto and Cancer generation were born between May 26, 1914 through June 14, 1939. and the Pluto in Leo generation were born between June 14th, 1939 through August 19th, 1957. And I'm not saying that it's everyone, because all generations are waking up right now. But when you're talking about the Pluto in Cancer generation, they generally are more set in their ways than the Pluto in Leo generation. The Pluto in Virgo generation have many of the trailblazers who began questioning the system, and were really the first generation who began truly looking outside the box and at all these subsequent generations afterwards, which includes Pluto in Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, and Capricorn. They're all going to be the beneficiaries of the Pluto in Virgo generation, and actually some of the Pluto in Leo generation as well. So if you look at many of the leaders within the spiritual and metaphysical genre, you'll find an extremely high percentage of people who have Pluto in Virgo, myself included. And from the Pluto in Virgo generation moving forward, we're all here to make a difference in this world, and we will all be considered the founding mothers and fathers who led future generations into the golden age. We are the generation and the generations who dared to be different in such a radical way that we didn't conform to society. Society conformed to us. So let's take a look at what we can expect in the future. Pluto remains in Capricorn until the year 2023, but it's already begun its retrograde, which means we're going to continue to see more and more whistleblowers coming out of the woodwork, as I predicted several years ago. Government, money, and religion have all kept us living in subservience, control, and conformity. But with Pluto being known as the destroyer, we're going to see a collapse of all three of these things that have prevented us from becoming a Type 1 civilization. And there's a reason why we're seeing an exponential rise in UFO sightings. These extraterrestrials have traveled light years to witness this event. And they're not even extraterrestrials. They're our galactic families who seeded us here millennia ago. I'm sure they're quite aware of the cyclic changes that brought us these specific energies and astrological alignments. You know, for example, if you look at these landmarks all around the world, such as the pyramids of the Giza Plateau, the Mayan pyramids, or Stonehenge, they're all aligned to specific astrological alignments. So that's proof positive that our galactic families are well aware of what's happening right now and what we can expect in the near future as we continue to move through Pluto in Capricorn. The transition to an asset-backed currency is a move in the right direction, but it still keeps us locked in as economic slaves to the system. Through the Venus Project, we learned that we can all live in abundance and in prosperity without the need for money. So in time, we'll move away from money completely. And, well, it's probably easier to explain and envision all of this by playing this clip from a video called Global Unity Project, What the World Needs Right Now.
What the world needs right now is less government and more leaders working in the best interests of humanity. Many people fear a new world order or a one world order. But if something like this was implemented in the right way, it could be the best idea ever. Unfortunately, we have come to associate a new world order or a one world order as something that represents tyranny and oppression, when it could actually represent a new age of peace, abundance, and prosperity for everyone. The biggest problem on this planet is government. If you trace the etymology of government, it means to control the mind. In the United States, it seems like everything the government tried to run inevitably fails. Look no further than the post office or the takeover of General Motors. So the word government would be eliminated, while the actual principle behind government would be replaced with a tribunal or council of elders representing all races and ethnicities who would work solely in the best interests of humanity. There would no longer be any 2 or 4 year term limits. We could vote on them every month if we wanted to. These elders would be 100% transparent and accountable each and every month. The minute they stop working in humanity's best interests, they're fired. Plain and simple. With the elimination of government, all patents, both public and suppressed, would be released, which would instantly transform this world into a new paradigm and would make the days we're currently living in seem like the Stone Age. According to Dr. Leonard Caldwell, there are over 300 cures for cancer, but most doctors are required by law to use surgery, radiation, or chemotherapy before any proven holistic measures, such as the Rife machine, THC oil, etc. This is but one small example of how beneficial technology and ideas have been suppressed from us, all in the interests of money, greed, and eugenics. In 1893, Nikola Tesla powered the Chicago's World Fair on free energy. His financier, J.P. Morgan, asked Tesla how he could charge people for this energy. Tesla stated it was free energy and that it could not be regulated. From that point forward, Morgan suppressed this idea because Morgan believed that he who controls the energy controls the power. As we know, Morgan became one of the founding fathers of the world's biggest Ponzi scheme, the Federal Reserve. Stanley Meyer invented a car that could go from coast to coast in the United States on 22 gallons of water. It could be any water: salt water, lake water, tap water, compressed snow, etc. Meyer was offered $1 billion from the automotive industry, but turned it down because he wanted this invention to go out to the people. Shortly afterwards, he was poisoned to death. Since the end of the 1800s, we should have had free electricity. Since the 1980s, we could have been using water-powered cars. Are you beginning to see the picture? Current companies and corporations could be re-educated to provide new services that benefit humanity and will be transparent and accountable for their actions. For example, Monsanto would immediately halt the production of their GMOs, but could start working on the genetic modification of fruits and vegetables that would be beneficial to society. As an example, they could splice the gene of a North Atlantic salmon with a tomato so people could grow tomatoes in cold environments, but there would not be anything detrimental in this product, such as pesticides that cause tumors in laboratory animals. Another example would be General Electric, who could start producing free energy systems. A common argument is that many people would lose their jobs due to new technologies. The people in the horse and buggy business thought the same thing when the car was introduced. New inventions will actually create new jobs. For example, the last thing that Big Pharma cured was polio, and they realized that there is no money in providing a cure for anything. Essentially, Big Pharma places a Band-Aid over our illnesses and diseases through perpetual maintenance versus finding a cure. From this point forward, Big Pharma will focus on cures instead of a temporary bandage that supports their industry through lifelong medications. A new breed of doctors will emerge who place holistic treatment ahead of anything else. In time, the Big Pharma doctor will either need to learn holistic medicine or will be phased out of existence. Of course, there are some things that cannot be cured and need maintenance through Big Pharma. But instead of using holistic treatment as a last resort, it will become the primary option. Most laws would be reduced to universal laws, where as long as you're not harming yourself or others, you are free to do as you please. There probably should be a few sub-laws, such as speed limits in neighborhoods where there are families, but generally all laws are based on respect for one another. Our police officers would once again become peace officers, and their main job would no longer be enforcing maritime code, but supporting peace. Similar to the Council of Elders, the peace officers will be held accountable for their actions and can be immediately replaced by someone who is willing to work in the best interests of humanity. Violators of any laws would be placed in a re-educational facility and would receive education on how to assimilate into this new society. Additionally, they would also provide free labor in producing new technologies that would benefit everyone, including themselves, upon release. A common language among all people should be implemented so we are able to communicate with one another across the world. This doesn't mean that it will be the only language, but it will be the language that everyone can understand and comprehend. Through the Venus Project, it has been proven that everyone can live in abundance and prosperity without the need for money. So money will be phased out as we no longer are economic slaves and are able to pursue our true divine reasons for being here. In time, most people will develop hobbies and interests that will help to support this new economy, but it starts without the need for individual gain or financial superiority over anyone else. All new ideas will immediately become open source, where if someone else has a better way or a modification of what you invented or created, then that idea is free for anyone to use, implement, or recreate into something better. As evidenced through the numerous cases of pedophilia, corruption, and crimes against humanity, the Roman Catholic Church would be dissolved and their net worth would be distributed throughout the world, creating instant abundance for everyone. The Roman Catholic Church has enough net worth to feed, clothe, and shelter everyone on this planet. So one must ask themselves, why is there starvation and homelessness? Just like all governments, the Roman Catholic Church is more into subservience, control, and conformity than it is honoring the word of their texts. In the ideal world, all religious texts would boil down to 4 words: love everyone, respect everything. Our educational system would be tailored to each child's strengths and needs versus clumping all children into one educational format. For example, an extrovert might excel more in a class where they're learning about public speaking, while the introvert might excel more in philosophy and the arts. A Montessori setting might be more applicable where the children's classroom would be outside in nature. Innate abilities such as clairvoyance would not be ridiculed, but would be encouraged as we are all born with unique gifts and abilities. We should also teach holistic remedies and cures for illnesses. For example, Big Pharma recommends heartburn medications such as Rolaids, Tums, and Pepcid AC. Innately, when you have heartburn, your body is telling you that your acid levels are too high and that you need to boost your alkalines. But Big Pharma is telling you that you can continue to eat unhealthy food because they have a pill that will resolve this issue. We're not being taught how to listen to our bodies or how to resolve these issues without the need for Big Pharma. A complete revision of history needs to be rewritten, not by the winner who always seems to record history, but from every perspective without propaganda. Additionally, the origins of mankind need to be reconsidered as there is evidence of mankind on Earth for many tens of thousands of years, as evidenced by researchers such as Michael Cremo and Graham Hancock. The way we view television will be completely revised. Imagine watching the 6 o'clock news and feeling good afterwards. The newscasters would report on all the positive things that are going on in this world instead of reinforcing fear and negativity. If there were any commercials, they would be for ideas and products that would benefit humanity versus selling us crap that we don't need or something that is designed to be made under the premise of controlled obsolescence, which forces us to buy the newer version every couple of years. The current paradigm thrives on the divide and conquer premise, which prevents us from coming together as a global society. Before anything, we all need to put aside any and all differences to unite, because once the bottom of the pyramid unites, the rest will collapse. One thing that will need to be determined and defined is what the best interests of humanity would be. Other things needed to be discussed would be ways to disarm and eliminate nuclear weapons and nuclear waste, the irrigation and purification of our water supply, new methods of cleaning up our environment, sustainable living through eco-friendly homes, as well as the optimal ways to grow food. I'm sure that there are many other ideas that would help make this world a better place for all of us, but this gives us a good starting point. I'm just a simple guy with a few ideas on how to fix what is broken. Any ideas from this point forward should all be open source, where there are no patents or individual intellectual ownership. We all need to work in the best interests of humanity and not for our own materialistic interests, because the path that we're heading is completely unsustainable. As David Icke says, the few control the many. We are the many, and we have the numbers to make this happen right now. Like the Hopi said, we are the ones that we have been waiting for. We are also the light at the end of the tunnel. What the world needs right now is for everyone to come together in a common cause. What ideas do you have?
And this is where we're at right now with Pluto in Capricorn. Now, I believe I've got Sean on the line with me.
Hi, Greg.
Hi, Sean. How are you doing?
Hello. How are you?
I have a nasty echo going on right now.
Uh-oh. Okay. Well, I just, everything you said sounded just excellent. I don't know who could top that, actually. But I wanted to talk about the astrology, because I felt it's very interesting. So would you like to hear what the astrology has to say as we go further down the line?
Definitely. Bring it on. Yes.
Okay. Yes. So you were mentioning your Pluto in Virgo, so I just want to say that for people who don't understand that, that's a certain group that came in. Pluto can transit anywhere from, it's a very slow-moving planetoid. It's not even a planet anymore. They demoted it. But it is extremely powerful. So it would roughly go about 30 years to a sign. So it moves very slow. But that can change, of course, like everything. And it can sometimes pass through a sign in 10 years, which it's known to do. So let me just talk about your group, the Pluto and Virgo group, because the Pluto and Virgo group came in after the Pluto and Leo group. Now, we needed the Pluto. I just mentioned this because I know this stuff, as an astrologer. The Pluto and Leo group, first of all, it's a bit like I think, therefore I am. So when we think of our parents' generation, they were probably, depending on how old you are, I mean, my parents were born in the Depression. 1924 was my parents' birth, both of them. So they grew up with the idea that there was no money, and eventually that the American dream, because, of course, a lot of us were children of immigrants or grandchildren in America. I'm a grandchild. And that money was the be-all, save-all factor to all that poverty. Okay, and I'm not surprised to hear your grandparents, or your parents, had that money stashed away, That's classic of their time. So what happened was when the Pluto in Leo generation came in, and I'm at the tail end of that, they were the ones that brought in all the ideas of peace, love, psychotherapy, transcendental meditation, the idea that you could actually expand your consciousness, and extreme creativity, the me generation. Without that, where would we be, to understand ourselves? And the tuning into the self is about tuning into really the higher self. But first, I think, therefore I am, you have to know yourself. Right? Now, what makes the Pluto and Leo generation different to the Pluto and Virgo generation, which is, about the next generation down, is that they have come in to do the Virgo work, which is the healing work, the farming work, the understanding of computers work, because Virgo's keywords are I analyze, right? But they are an earth sign, and they're very much attracted to healing, animals, plants, food, and anything to do with nature. as well as understanding the mind, because many a psychotherapist is a Virgo or has that quality. But using plants, using herbs, and cleaning up the planet. Absolutely cleaning up the planet. So it's very interesting that generation comes in. Now, I just want to take this to a global, so that would be my generation, your generation, of course, the next one down, right, would be the Pluto and Libra. They're all the peacemongers out there, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So let's go to where we're at today. We have Saturn in Scorpio. Saturn in Scorpio, Saturn is the disciplinarian, the lawmaker, the karmic teacher, okay? And Saturn's also about structure. It's the ruler of Capricorn. Pluto is in Capricorn right now. So what we have going on is the scorpionic delve into the abyss. This is why you're seeing things getting worse. And, of course, what does Scorpio rule? Other people's money. So if Taurus rules your own personal money, what's in your pocket, your home, the material world you live in, connected with your material things, then Scorpio, the opposite, rules the banks, the lending of money, the hiding of money, the abuse of money, right? So you can clearly see, because you mentioned the astrology, how this unfolds. Now, Pluto is going to be in Capricorn for a long time, and I'm going to go to what's going to happen when Pluto moves into its next sign, which is really where all the good stuff comes in, right? But first, we have to go through this purge, and you see it in the system, the banking systems, of course. You see it in people's personal lives. Lots and lots of people are losing their jobs, they're losing their so-called security, and they're looking within. How do I cope with this? What do I do? How do I learn sustainability, right? And all these things bring this transformation, which is Saturn in Scorpio is getting to eventually. Now, Saturn will move out of Scorpio, for those who don't know. It's still got a while to go, and it will be moving out January 2015. So we've got a good year of this still, whatever happens, if you're following the influences of the planets. And then when Saturn moves into Sagittarius, Sagittarius is a much more happier placement. So this is where you start to see the bigger picture, because Sagittarius is a sign of bigness, largesse. It's also about religion, funnily enough, and what people's beliefs are. But it's not like Pisces, religion, the church. It's personal. It's individual. It's who am I? Where do I come from? It's the seeker, the spiritual seeker. And I think you'll start to begin to see the collapse of the church right before this. So this isn't far away at all. And you'll start to see also that Sagittarius rules the truth. The truth, not a truth, but the truth. So you're going to start to see in the Saturn ruling Sagittarius for up to almost 3 years. So that brings us up to it's going to be somewhere around 2018. Yep. Right before it, October 2017. Oh, sorry. No, I was right. It's moving into 2018. As it moves through its signs, right, then Saturn will move into its home placement, which is Capricorn. Now you have that mirroring up with Pluto in Capricorn. This is when you're going to start to see structures being rebuilt, real physical structure. So whatever was destroyed, whatever was not working, whatever wasn't effective, because Saturn loves structure. Capricorn is all about not building an empire like the old days, but building a structure that actually works. And that's all the things you just described, before I spoke to you, that you were telling your audience. So as we move then further down the line, and I'm looking... Do you understand what I'm saying, Greg?
Yeah, but I'm getting this huge echo going on right now.
Okay. So I'll just finish up with saying that when we go into 2024, it sounds a long way away, but remember, we're halfway through, almost three-quarters, it's August 2013. So we're only really speaking 11 years from now, okay? We finally move from Pluto in Capricorn to the very beginnings of Pluto. That's February 2024, Pluto in Aquarius. And, of course, Aquarius is the dawn of enlightenment. Aquarius is the energy of humanity. Who rules? Humanity. What's important? Humanitarian endeavors. Aquarius has the highest ideals, and it is a sign of ideals, And also it's very modern in its thinking, very futuristic. So if you want the astrology to back up the things that you're saying, it will take a long time to rebuild, a long time, not a long time, but looking at a decade, to re-envision the planet, make it run so that everyone can actually live on it properly, right? I don't think, realistically, it's all going to be hunky-dory overnight. There's probably be a lot of
No.
fear and panic and God knows what else. But this is the astrology that backs up everything you're saying. But it gives you a time placement,
Mm-hmm.
So I thought your listeners would like to hear that, so they can that way you don't, I also wanted to add one other thing, because many years ago I actually lived in Cyprus, and Cyprus was one of the first actual collapses in Europe. I mean, we did have a bit in Ireland, we had it in Spain, but nothing like they got in Cyprus and Greece, right? And Cyprus is a little island, It's not very big at all. You could probably drive it from one coast to the other in about 6 hours. And if you want to see what happens to people when the bank actually goes in and takes your money right out of your bank account without your permission or knowledge, then look to Cyprus. But amazingly enough, people there are getting, they're doing a lot of what you mentioned, trying to get out from under. But Cyprus is the one to look at, because they really got screwed, you know what I mean? They really got screwed. And they're a beautiful country, very nice people, the Greeks, the Cypriots. So, anyway, I just wanted to contribute that. That's all.
Well, Sean, I can't thank you enough for helping to fill in the blanks from an astrological perspective.
It gives a good balance, doesn't it? Because then you understand there are other things, of course. I've only mentioned a couple planets, Obviously, there's much more. But when you're looking at Pluto, Capricorn is also, it is the emperor. It is the empire, right? Capricorn is the empire. So the empire, Pluto is the destroyer, the natural ruler of Scorpio. So it's destroying the empire, of course. And it's a slow process, like anything Pluto does. And, of course, excuse me, we've been saying this for years, and every day you see more news and more evidence of things happening, in the planet. And my hope is that the planet hangs in there, because I think nature is in serious trouble, But if we all work together, there's absolutely no reason that we can't bring it back, and bring it back in the most way. And I do believe loads and loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of people are here for that reason. As you mentioned, the Pluto and Virgo generation, right? But the Pluto and Virgo generation is already in their 40s and 50s. All right, so it's got to be the young people too, the younger people. My daughter's Pluto in Sagittarius.
Mm-hmm.
She got in there. She's 16. She'll be 17 in September. So it's again, they're going to be the ones to inherit, aren't they? And their children. So this is the generation. You want that. You want those upbeat signs. You want Sagittarius, you want Aquarius, you want that embracing the world. It's not just America, it's not just one part of the world. It's the entire world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I had to say. Lovely to speak to you, Gregg.
You as well, Sean. I'm so grateful that you chimed in and gave us that perspective.
Anytime, my friend, anytime.
All right,
okay?
And don't be a stranger.
I'm never a stranger, you know that.
I know that.
Okay, Gregg. Lots of love, and I'll be listening. I'll let someone else.
All right, Sean. Love you too.
Okay. Bye.
Okay, that is one of my favorite psychics on the planet, Sean Cohen. And I highly recommend if anybody is looking for an amazing psychic. And she does so much more than that, but boy, she's helped me out in so many different ways. Definitely, that's one of the best that you'll find. Now, did you ever see those Jesus fish on the back of someone's car? Well, that fish represents the age of Pisces, and before the church collapses, I bet they try to change that symbol from the fish to something that represents the age of Aquarius. And I see we have another caller online here. What we're going to do is, I see we have another caller on hold here, and that is area code 805. You're on the air on In5D Radio. Are you there, 805? 805. Going once, going twice. Chances are they're listening on a cell phone, so we're going to put you on mute and move on to the next caller. We have area code 720. You're on the air with In5D Radio. Can you hear us? 720, area code. I'm guessing this person might be listening as well. Okay. And we're going to put you on hold as well. Okay. And we do have open lines. Our call-in number is 646-716-8890. And, yeah, all of a sudden I don't hear the echo now. That's weird. So of course, those in power are not going to relinquish their power without a fight, which is why we're seeing government tyranny and oppression all throughout the world. And it's no coincidence that there was, and still is, a big push for the New World Order to happen at this specific point in time and space. You see, those people who are ruling the planet, and I don't mean the puppets who are political figures. We're talking about the shadow government and the people who are pulling their strings. They already know the power of Pluto and Capricorn. These are people who are master astrologers and have been planning this point in time for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So what Pluto is giving us is the opportunity to turn something negative into something positive. And as long as these whistleblowers keep coming out of the woodwork, and they will, we're going to continue to see an awakening in exponential numbers. But it's from this point forward whether we create the change we want to see, or whether we allow those who have kept us living in tyranny and oppression to make that decision for us. Now, because Pluto is in Capricorn until 2023, we're not going to see this transition into the Golden Age overnight, like Sean said. And there's a good chance that we might take a step backwards before we take a huge leap forward. So with that in mind, it's always a good idea to have at least 1 to 3 months worth of canned food and water in your home, just in case there is a total collapse of the dollar without a system in place to replace it. And this is not fear-mongering by any means. If, or should I say when, the dollar collapses, all grocery stores will be wiped out of food. Most people have only less than a week's worth of food in their home, so it's better to be safe than sorry or hungry. The United States government has been hoarding hollow point ammunition, and according to the Geneva Convention, hollow point ammunition is illegal to use in international warfare. So the only people they intend to use this ammunition on is their own people. The government has enough hollow point ammunition to put 3 to 4 bullets in every man, woman, and child in the United States. Once again, this is not fear-mongering, but one has to ask themselves, what is the purpose for hoarding so much hollow point ammunition? And if it can't be used in international warfare, then why isn't this money being used to help the homeless or to create new jobs? And when you dig deeper, you once again end up with Pluto and Capricorn and how revolutions tend to be the predominant theme during this alignment. Now, some say that the best way to have a revolution is through peaceful noncompliance. Imagine if everyone boycotted 1 or 2 major corporations, such as Walmart and Exxon, for 1 month, and then boycotted 2 different ones every month thereafterwards. Something like this would literally collapse every one of these corporations who do not work in humanity's best interests, and there's nothing the government could do to prevent it from happening. We're at a point in time where we need to be less reliant on the government and to start creating our own solutions, because the government rarely ever works in humanity's best interest. Now, you'll have people saying that they're receiving government assistance for housing and food stamps, but it was the same government who exported jobs to other countries who created the need for government assistance. This is why they want this whole system to collapse and have us all reliant upon the government to simply exist as a human being. And if you don't, you're screwed. So ultimately, we need to take our power back. And that's why religion tries to take your power away from you. You either need to believe in Jesus Christ or you're going to hell in a handbasket, according to Christianity. What the church refuses to tell you is that, number one, you are a powerful spiritual being with or without Jesus Christ. And number two, there is no hell. And not by coincidence, right on the heels of Pluto and Capricorn, retired Episcopal Bishop John Shelby Spong admitted that hell is the invention of church.
I don't think hell exists. I happen to believe in life after death, but I don't think it's got a thing to do with reward and punishment. Religion is always in the control business, and that's something people don't really understand. It's in the guilt-producing control business. And if you have heaven as a place where you're rewarded for your goodness and hell as a place where you're punished for your evil, then you sort of have control of the population. And so they create this fiery place, which has quite literally scared the hell out of a lot of people throughout Christian history. Mm. And it's part of a control tactic.
But wait a minute, you're saying that hell, the idea of a place under the earth or somewhere where you're tormented for an eternity, is actually an invention of the church?
I think the church fired its furnaces hotter than anybody else. But I think there's a sense in most religious life of reward and punishment in some form. The church doesn't like for people to grow up, because you can't control grown-ups. That's why we talk about being born again. When you're born again, you're still a child. The people don't need to be born again. They need to grow up. They need to accept their responsibility for themselves and the world.
What do you make of the theology, which is quite prominent these days in America, which is that there is one guaranteed way not to go to hell, and that is to accept Jesus as your personal Savior?
Yeah, I grew up in that tradition. Every church I know claims that we are the true church, and they have some ultimate authority. We have the infallible Pope, we have the inerrant Bible. The idea that the truth of God can be bound in any human system, by any human creed, by any human book, is almost beyond imagination for me. I mean, God is not a Christian. God is not a Jew or a Muslim or a Hindu or a Buddhist. All of those are human systems which human beings have created to try to help us walk into the mystery of God. I honor my tradition. I walk through my tradition. But I don't believe my tradition defines God. I think it only points me to God.
So your church is lying to you. Your government's lying to you. Our schools are teaching our children state-sponsored propaganda. The mainstream media is controlled by the CIA and the government, and literally programs our minds to become worthless, self-centered, materialistic, egocentric people. Our food and air and water supplies are poisoned. So tell me, what is the government doing about any of this, and why are we complying with these psychopaths? The system is broken beyond repair, and it's time to replace it with something that works in humanity's best interest, not against them. So one of the things I proposed is to put together a council of elders representing all races who work in humanity's best interests with 100% transparency. We could vote on them every month if we wanted to. All they need to do is show how they're working in humanity's best interests. It's that simple. Now, imagine the council of elders having a news conference. They might announce something like, "Last week, we foreclosed upon all churches and will be releasing their net worth to every person on this planet, which will create abundance for everyone. We are currently working on free energy systems and hope to have them released within 30 days to all of humanity. We have also approved the technology for water-powered cars, and they should go into production within the next few months. All genetically modified foods will be burned and replaced with organic seeds as nature intended. We have also approved over 400 cures for cancer. Next week, we'll be looking into water and air purification systems, as well as replacing Big Pharma with holistic cures as the first means of preventative medicine." Could you imagine that? This is where we're heading, but it all has to collapse beforehand before we can rebuild it with something that works in humanity's best interests. So, I've been having a heck of a time over here with the echo and everything else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap things up a little early tonight, but I'd like to remind everyone to tune in to In5D Radio next week, as we'll be welcoming astrologer Tom Kapacha Lesher to In5D Radio. So this is going to be a show that you don't want to miss. On behalf of my co-host Kendra Gilbert, who couldn't make it tonight, but she'll be here next week, this is Gregg Prescott from In5D.com. Namaste, everyone.